Hey, what's up guys? Guardian here, coming to you guys with a deck profile for my standard Blaster deck. So the deck has been out now for over a week, and yeah, I can happily say that this deck is pretty fun to play. Yeah, the blasters all working with each other, getting these really big effects going off is just really fun. I think the best word I can use to describe this deck is it's kind of like a puzzle deck in a way, because you're looking for the different pieces to fit in the right place. And it's quite entertaining, like when you're trying to meet a certain goal with all the different blasters to get the big effect off with Messianic Lord Blaster as well. So yeah, without further ado, we'll get stuck into the deck, and I'll show you guys what I am playing. So to start off with the grade 3s, we have the big boss himself, Messianic Lord Blaster. So this guy has two abilities, which is, during your turn, if you have 6 units with Blaster in their different card names, this unit gets the original power and critical of all of your rear guards. So yeah, this guy can get pretty huge. His power can like exceed somewhere around about 70,000 in total. And he gets the original criticals of all your rear guards as well, which means he's going to get an additional 5 crit on top of his 1, putting him to 6 crit, which is just, yeah, that is pretty deadly indeed. It can legit just one-hit the opponent, and it's just really cool to be able to pull that off. Funny story is that for those who follow me on Facebook, the first game I had with this deck, I accidentally killed someone with Messianic Lord Blaster because I was able to get the 4 different blasters, Messianic included, and then the twin drive revealed 2 more different blasters, and I accidentally killed my opponent because he didn't really think I'd get the extra 2 blasters, and neither did I, to be honest, until I revealed the 2 blasters, and I was like, oh my god, his effect's activated, and I'm about to kill you right now. So, yeah, it's really funny. Very high roll, I know, but like I said, it's a very fun puzzle deck, and I think Messianic's is really cool, so yeah. But you gotta play the 4 of him because he is your only grade 3 in this deck, and the way this deck kind of rolls is that you want to try get your force markers on the go as much as possible, because this deck really lacks in terms of power before your blaster abilities come online, so you really need to get those force 1s on your field to build your power up to at least apply some pressure to your opponent, you know what I mean? So yeah, got to play the 4 of him, so we'll put him up here in the corner. And then next, for the grade 4s, we are playing the 3 copies of Exculpate the Blaster. So Exculpate, we all recognize, is a really good Vanguard, but Exculpate is also a really good rearguard in this deck, because with Messianic Lord Blaster, you can call this guy from the drive check to your rearguard circle, because the skill isn't grade restricted. You can just call any blaster you want from the drive checks to your rearguard. And we also played the grade 1 in this deck that I believe I was playing at Soul Saver in some point. I believe his name is Lucius. Where is he? This guy here. So this guy, when you ride a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, you can call a unit from your hand to the rearguard circle by putting him into the soul and drawing a card. So yeah, he replaces himself, and then you get to call any unit from your hand to the rearguard circle whilst also feeding your soul. So that's a way for you to actually call Exculpate if you end up drawing him at any stage in the game. So that's really cool there. But yeah, having an Exculpate on your rearguard circle is just really effective in terms of just pressuring your opponent when it comes to your power columns, because magic numbers mean a lot in this deck, and you need to try apply as much pressure as you can. And the 14k base that Exculpate has, with, you know, your force markers and a 10k booster like Javelin, can actually go a long way when it comes to applying pressure. So yeah, I think 3 of them is a good amount though, because it gives you enough of him to potentially use him for the Vanguard circle, because he's still good against the Excel matchup, but also gives you enough like left over to use for your rearguard circles for some beat sticks. So yeah, Exculpate, really good addition to this deck. It makes you think that they kind of planned this, you know, bringing him out first and then bringing the Blaster engine stuff out later on. Yeah, conspiracy? I think not. So we have the 3 Exculpate the Blaster. And then the final grade 4 of the deck, of course, is going to be the 2 Arcsaver Dragon. So Arcsaver has a lot of things going for it, which I think he hasn't been given as much credit as he deserves. But yeah, he has a couple of things that are nice, which is the fact that 1, its grade is able to go down by 1 if you have a blaster, 3 or more different blasters on your Vanguard circle or your drop zone. So you can actually set that up pretty nicely if you don't have the Messianic Lord Blaster for the grade 3 ride. So it can actually help you not misride, which is really important because, like I said, you really want to get those force markers on the go whenever you can. So fixing your ride is definitely a value, but also Arc Saver is searchable through Blaster Arrow, which is also really good. So that means the deck's got a bit of consistency when it actually comes to riding as well. So that's good there. So some other things about Arc Saver is that the 14k base is actually pretty decent as well, because it means that all those typical force numbers are going to be a little bit short when it comes to making those magic numbers against you. Because now, you know, the 23, 28, 33, 38 columns, they're now 1,000 power short to make that a magic number against your 14k base, which means you're actually a lot more defensive now. You're an Arc Saver, and you don't have to guard with as many cards in your hand, which is really good for this deck because you need to be as conservative as possible in this deck when it comes to spending your resources, when it comes to guarding and stuff like that. So that's really good. Now, one thing with this skill, the main skill, which is you Counterblast 3, Soul Blast 3, call a blaster from any of your different zones, from your damage, your deck, your drop zone, or your soul. That's fine. I know that people are a bit upset for the fact that you can't call a face down blaster. You have to call a face up blaster from the damage zone. I understand that, but at the same time, don't forget you can use this skill still when you're at 3 damage, because you can counterblast that 3 damage, and then you can still call from the soul, the deck, and the drop zone, which is still really good, because remember, things like Alfred Early and Monarch Sanctuary Alfred were still able to sort of recycle a Blaster Blade from your soul and like Soul Blast that card and then get some reuse out of it. And that's the same for Arc Saver. You can Soul Blast a useful card from your soul for the cost and then bring it back out. So that's still rather powerful, and it really helps you in terms of your aggro push, because just giving you an outright +3 is just really strong still. So yeah, that's everything I've got to say about Arc Saver. I think it's got more uses than it's given credit, but that's my opinion about the card there. But I think 2 is a fine enough number, just because, like I said, Blaster Arrow can search it from the deck, so I don't really think you need more than 2 copies. So next we have the grade 2s, which I'll go through a little bit quick here, because the rest of the deck is actually rather simplistic in terms of what you need to put in here. So we have the 4 Blaster Blade, of course, and then we have the 4 copies of Blaster Dagger, Blaster Arrow, and then we have the 4 copies of Blaster Javelin. So we have 4 copies of each of the grade 2 blasters, of course. There's no reason not to play these. But what I will say, though, is that they're quite useful in different occasions. I've already explained Arrow, the fact that it can search Arc Saver, that's really good. But the fact that it makes it so that the Blaster ability makes it so that your opponent cannot choose your units with their card abilities gives you a out to like things like Binding for like Narukami, and retiring from things like Kagero, which is actually pretty useful, because that means they'll have to waste an attack on one of those units if they want to break your blaster board, which is actually pretty good. Now, Blaster Rapier, I have to say, is probably my favourite grade 2 here, just because setting up the top card of your deck, you know, either to the bottom or the top when it attacks, is really, really good mind game mechanics you can do with this deck, because since you're looking for both triggers as normal, but also blaster units as well, you can actually set up a blaster on the top of your deck that you need for Messianic, and then if they see that you've left the top card of your deck, they might think, that's either a trigger, or they're going to get a blaster that's going to make Messianic skill online, which is pretty scary indeed. So I really like the mind gaming mechanics that Blaster Rapier brings to this deck. It's really, really entertaining. And one thing that I typically do with Blaster Rapier is that I boost it with Dagger, just because if my Vanguard attack hits, then that rested Dagger that I've already used to boost Rapier has already been used, so it's really useful for me to bounce that used card back to my hand, just to be a little bit more conservative, and then potentially guard with it if I need the extra shield. So that's really cool there. So those are my little plays that I've done with this deck when I've tested the deck out over the weekend, and yeah, it's pretty cool. And one thing about Blaster Ball I will say is that don't be afraid of using his retire skill. I know that it's a counterblast and a soul blast, but one thing, especially with Arc Saver and Blaster Blade in the deck here, is that those are the only cards in your deck that are going to cost you resources in terms of like a counterblast, you know, ignoring Exculpate skill, because it's a very niche scenario when you're actually going to use that skill. But Arc Saver and Blaster Blade, don't be afraid of using the Blaster Blade skill early game, because that actually could be a good thing if you end up revealing like a heal trigger. Because the one thing you don't want to do is get a heal trigger and then heal if face up damage. That's really, really going to suck long time. And yeah, you really want to be, you kind of want to plan ahead. You want to think, right, I'll use a counterblast here, and then if a heal comes up at some point, which it might because I haven't seen any yet, then I can heal a face down damage instead of a face up one. So that way your resources aren't going to waste. So that's a little bit of a tip there that I've noticed when I play this deck. So yeah. But typically speaking, that's pretty much all the Blaster Grade 2s. There's no reason not to run 4 copies of each of them. So we will go into the Grade 1s. So to start off the Grade 1s, we have the 4 copies of Blaster Javelin, of course. A really, really cool card. I really love this one. And also I'll put Blaster Dagger down here as well. We'll just move those over a little bit just to make room. There we go. So yeah, Blaster Javelin and Blaster Dagger. Javelin is just really good as a grade 1 booster because he gets an extra 2k power during the battle that he's boosting, as long as you have a Blaster or Arcsaver Vanguard. And this is really solid in terms of making magic number columns. It's just really, really good. Yeah, I can't really say much more. It's a 10k booster. It's a good card. And then the Blaster ability for Javelin is that when it is boosting whilst the Blaster effect's online, you get to bind one of your opponent's face up, one of your opponent's front row rear guards, which is actually pretty useful, because that means if they have any like interceptors there that you want to get rid of, so that you can minimize the amount of shield they can guard with, that's pretty good there. But it's also just good in general to remove any good units off of their field for like no cost. Like, once the Blaster effect's online, you just get a free bind, which is just really good. And whilst I remember, actually, I forgot to mention Javelin's skill, which is that she gets an additional 15,000 power when the Blaster effects are online, which is, that's pretty good. Yeah, 25k attack on her own, and then an 8k booster makes it 33, or a 10k makes 35, and then Force Markers, oh boy, you are looking at like 40,000 or plus columns there, which is pretty good indeed. So, yeah. But then Dagger, right, oh my god, right, Dagger, I'd probably say Dagger is the coolest one, just because he makes it just sort of finishes the puzzle, if you know what I mean, because his Blaster ability makes it so that all of your Blaster units gain the boost effect, which is just, it's so, so good, because that means it doesn't matter wherever your units are placed, it does matter in the long term where you're putting your units. Like, you want to make the most optimal choices where you're placing your units, but it just fixes the ache of putting like a grade 2 or a grade 4 in the back row, knowing that it's got boost now is just solid, because that means all of your grade 2s become 10k boosters. You know, even Exculpate himself, if that's in the back row, that's a 14k booster, which is good, because that makes 24k columns with all your grade 2s, and that's some good numbers to aim for, especially when you're getting your force markers on the roll. So, yeah. Whew, man. Yeah, Dagger is pretty good for that. Really, really like Dagger. You are in a good place when you see Dagger, trust me. But yeah, like I say, with Dagger, if your Vanguard with Blaster or Arcsaver hits, you get a bouncing back to your hand, and that's actually pretty good for the long term, because you really want to be, like I say, you want to be conservative with your card choices in terms of when you're guarding or when you're giving up cards. The Dagger is really good for the fact that you can keep that 10k, you can bounce that 10k shield back to your hand just in case you need the extra shield. You know, that could come really handy. So yeah, do bear that in mind. And then the final grade 1 I'll just put down here. We have 4 copies of Lucius, which of course will feed your soul, which is good for Arcsaver and also Blaster Blade, depending on what you're going for. And then obviously it can call the Exculpate from your hand in case you end up drawing them earlier on, before Messianic can actually call them from the Twin Drive. So that's really good there. So that's pretty much the entire deck, and those are pretty much my thoughts in terms of the deck, and little tweaks you can do here and there, and little like combo things that you can do. So the only thing left is the triggers. So we have the grade 0 starter, which is going to be Glyme, of course. And then for the triggers, I decided to go for 6 criticals. So we have 4 Epona and then 2 Flogal. And the reason for this is because I have 2 copies of the Margal draw trigger in the deck. Now, it's pretty self-explanatory why. It's because this deck is very piece-reliant, and you want to see all of the pieces to complete your puzzle. So I think it's definitely important to run the couple of extra draws just to generate that little bit of extra draw power in the deck. And also, Margal's actually a pretty good discard fodder with your Blaster Arrow because, I mean, there's nothing better to discard than a 5k shield, 5k power trigger. So that's pretty good there. So it's a nice discard fodder there, and also discard fodder for your PG in case you end up using that with the Margals. That's good there. So yeah, 4 draw PG, and then the final card on the deck is of course going to be the 4 Elaine heal trigger, completing the deck and rounding it up. And the cool thing about this deck, by the way, is the fact that besides some Lucius over here, everything in the deck is double rare or higher, which is yeah, that's pretty crisp. That's pretty nice indeed. Very shiny deck indeed. But yeah, like I said, this deck is really fun. I definitely pick it up if you are just a Royal Paladin fan in general, and you just like, you know, playing fun decks. And yeah, that's all I've got, guys. So thank you guys very much for watching. If you've got any questions or any, like, you know, just want to chat about anything about this deck in the comment section below, feel free. And yeah, I will come at you guys next with probably a premium deck. Because I'm actually moving Alfred over into premium format and then messing around with that a little bit. So yeah, look forward to that, but I'm not too sure when that's going to come out. It'll probably be a couple of weeks, but we'll see what happens. Because I know that the premium collection is actually coming out this weekend, which I kind of forgot about that. But yeah, we'll have a little bit of a mess around with that and see what happens there. But guys, that is it for the standard Blaster deck. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel for more videos. And yeah, that's me. So thank you guys very much for watching. And like always, guys, have a nice day. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Guardian, signing out.